73,000. That's the number of jobs the Bureau of Labor Statistics says got added last month. Not thin, anemic. Underneath that headline, May and June were revised down by a combined 258,000 jobs that turned out to never exist. This is the weakest hiring pace recorded since December 2020, when the economy was still buried under a pandemic collapse. Jenna Jackson is 28. She's been out of work for 4 months, and she applies constantly. Mornings, nights, weekends, the same routine on repeat. Headlines keep telling her the economy is strong, unemployment is low, everything's fine. Jenna doesn't buy it. Then how come no one can find a job, she says, not as a complaint, but as a direct challenge to the number itself. Sabrina Ryan has spent 8 months trying to escape freelance work and land something stable. She calls the odds insurmountable, her word, not a headline writer's. When that jobs report landed, weak and revised downward, she didn't feel discouraged. She felt validated. Finally, a number matched her own experience instead of contradicting it, instead of implying that her 8 months of rejection were somehow her fault. Charles Whitley is 22, a computer science and math graduate. In one interview, he wasn't talking to a person at all, an AI interviewer, programmed to insert fake ums and pauses, manufacturing the sound of human hesitation to seem less like a machine. Charles calls it horror movie type stuff, not because it malfunctioned, because it worked exactly as designed, and that's the disturbing part. Now zoom out to a whole profession. Across the country, 411,549 teaching positions are either sitting empty or filled by someone who isn't certified to be there. That's roughly 1 in 8 teaching jobs in America. Not a shortage in one district, not a rural anomaly, but a structural gap baked into the system that raised every kid still in it. 4 people, different ages, different fields, different cities. Jenna in retail adjacent work, Sabrina in freelance limbo, Charles fresh out of a computer science program, and 400,000 teaching jobs sitting hollow. On the surface, unrelated. Underneath, one system connects every single one of them. A system I'm gonna call the ghost economy, because that's exactly what it is. Present everywhere, visible nowhere. Here's the precise definition, because vague anger doesn't hold up under scrutiny. The ghost economy runs on jobs that don't actually exist. Postings kept alive for optics. Employers who vanish mid-process without a single word. Interviewers with no face, no name, no pulse. And workers forced to shrink their own accomplishments, flatten their own resumes, just to slip through filters built to reject them by default. The ghost economy doesn't operate as one flat wall. It runs on 4 levels, stacked like filters, each one catching what the last one missed. Level 1, the application level. Level 2, the interview level. Level 3, the structural level. Level 4, the endgame. What happens to a person after they survive all 3? We're going to walk through every single one, in order, starting now. Level 1, the application level. According to data compiled by Lifehack, the average job seeker now applies to over 100 positions just to secure a single offer. Not to get hired outright, just to land one offer worth considering. 100 attempts, statistically, to generate one result. That ratio alone should tell you the front door of the job market isn't a door, it's a filter. Compare that to a 2023 survey by Insight Global. The average applicant sent out 30 applications and received 4 callbacks. 4, not 4 offers, 4 callbacks, 4 moments of even being noticed. 30 attempts for 4 acknowledgements is roughly a 13% response rate, and that's before a single interview happens. The gap between the headline economy and the ground level economy starts right here in the math. So who's actually filtering out those other 26 applications? Not a hiring manager, an applicant tracking system, software, not a person, scanning resumes before any human eye reaches them. These systems are now near universal at large companies, which means for most job seekers, the very first interview isn't with a person at all. It's with an algorithm trained to say no by default. This isn't new technology dressed up as a crisis. Applicant tracking platforms like Taleo Bureau and iSIMS rose in the 2000s, built to handle a flood of online applications once job hunting moved to the internet. What started as a filing system for overwhelmed HR departments is now used by nearly every company on the Fortune 500 list. 2 decades later, the filter has become the gatekeeper, so the resume stops being a story of your career. It becomes a keyword matching exercise, engineered to satisfy software, not to impress a human. Job seekers now rewrite their resume for every single application, roughly 100 rewrites to match 100 applications. Not refining your pitch, reverse engineering a machine's vocabulary, one job posting at a time, hoping this version finally clears the filter. Here's the number that's supposed to summarize all of this. 5 months. That's the median unemployment duration, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics data from July 2024. 5 months, right down the middle. But talk to the people actually living inside that number and they'll tell you the official count undercounts the weight because it stops measuring the moment someone gives up looking. Start with a definition. A ghost job isn't a scam run by a shell company. It's a real employer publishing a real listing for a role that does not currently exist. No headcount was approved. No hire is coming this quarter, maybe not this year. The posting isn't there to be filled, it's there to be seen. And that changes what you're actually competing for. Here's the number. A 2022 Clarify Capital survey found 43% of hiring managers admit they keep dead listings open on purpose, not by accident. The reasons split 2 ways. Some want the outside world to see growth, investors and competitors included, so the listing signals expansion even when none is happening internally. Others aim it inward, at their own overworked staff, as a quiet promise that relief is coming. Growth theater and morale theater don't cover it. Some ghost postings build what recruiters call a just-in-case pipeline, a resume stockpile ready the moment someone quits. Others are duller. A manager simply forgot to take the listing down after the role closed. No conspiracy, just neglect. From the applicant's side, all 3 look identical. A black hole that eats an application and returns nothing. So how do you spot one before you waste a week on it? 3 tells. First, the description is generic. Vague duties no real manager would bother writing. Second, there's no posting date, or the date quietly resets every few weeks. Third, and most reliable, the role doesn't appear on the company's own career page or social accounts, only on third-party boards. Real hires get announced. Ghosts don't. That's level 1 application. Say you clear it. A real posting, a real reply. You've entered level 2, the interview level. This is where the system stops filtering resumes and starts extracting something else entirely. Your unpaid labor. The gate doesn't just ask if you're qualified. It asks how much free work you're willing to produce on the promise, not the guarantee, of a job. Just apply is advice from people who haven't done this in a decade. Applying costs money, an outfit for the interview, hours spent researching the company's mission, its recent earnings call, its org chart, then weeks, not days, of unpaid prep for each round. All of that spent before a single dollar changes hands, on a process that, most of the time, ends in silence or a 2-line rejection. And prep is the easy part. Multi-round gauntlets now routinely demand a finished deliverable, a full marketing plan, a mock ad campaign, a working coding project built from scratch, on your own time, before anyone offers you a contract. It's not a test of whether you can do the job. It's the job, extracted for free from a dozen candidates, only one of whom will ever get paid. Here's the split worth noticing. Some small companies still pay a modest fee for a take-home test. A few $100s, an ethical floor, an acknowledgement that your time has a price. Meanwhile, some of the most profitable corporations in the country, posting record quarterly earnings, run the same multi-round unpaid gauntlet and pay nothing. The smallest players in this economy behave better than the largest. Then there's the silence itself. A 2025 Criteria Corp report puts a number on it. 48% of job seekers say they were ghosted by an employer in the past year. No rejection, no closure, just nothing. That's up from 38%. The trend line isn't flat. It's getting worse year over year, even as companies collect more applicant data than at any point before. Call this the second ghost in the system. The first was the fake posting, a job that never existed. The second is the process itself, a hiring pipeline engineered with no feedback loop at all. Not indifference, design. No one built in a mechanism to tell you no. no, because building one costs money and effort. A system under no obligation to answer you will never spend. And now the interviewer on the other side of that silence might not be a person at all. Agentic AI systems are already conducting live interviews. A faceless voice, sometimes an avatar, asking follow-up questions, adjusting tone, running the entire conversation without a single human present. You prepare for weeks to convince a person to hire you. Increasingly, there is no person, just a system evaluating your performance. Remember Whitley from earlier, the case that opened this video? Here's the detail worth sitting with again. The AI interviewing her didn't just ask questions. It fabricated small hesitations, tiny verbal stumbles to sound more human, programmed uncertainty, engineered to be trusted. That's the uncanny valley of getting hired. A machine performing the appearance of a person, performing the appearance of caring whether you get the job. Wharton management professor Matthew Bidwell has studied this shift, and his warning is blunt. Having AI both screen and evaluate candidates with no human checking its judgment at any stage, he calls quite alarming. Not inefficient, alarming. That's not a word researchers reach for lightly. The same systems filtering your resume are now grading your voice, your pauses, your face, with nobody accountable for what they decide. Quick pause, one line, then we keep moving. If you'd rather have a system like this explained plainly than sold to you with fake urgency, that's what this channel does every week. Subscribe if that's you. Nothing else to say about it. Back to level 2, because the interview gauntlet isn't finished. It gets worse before we reach the structural layer underneath it. In 2024, Derek Mobley filed a lawsuit against Workday, whose software handles hiring for roughly half the Fortune 500. His claim? Workday's AI screening tool systematically rejected applicants over 40, regardless of qualifications. A federal judge let the case proceed as a nationwide class action. This isn't speculation about future bias, it's a live lawsuit alleging an algorithm learned discrimination, then scaled it across thousands of employers at once. Zoom out further. Independent research on large language models, the same architecture powering resume screeners and AI interviewers, has repeatedly found measurable race and gender bias baked into their outputs. Automating a broken filter doesn't fix the filter, it launders it, wrapping human prejudice in a layer of mathematical neutrality that makes the bias harder to see, harder to prove, and nearly impossible to sue over. Level 3. The structural level. Applications get ghosted, interviews get automated, but underneath both is a harder truth. The jobs themselves are disappearing, not just becoming difficult to land. This isn't a hiring process problem anymore. It's an economy quietly restructuring who gets to work at all and why. Layer by layer, the ground keeps shifting under anyone still looking. A 2017 Harvard Business School report put a number on this. Roughly 6 million jobs in America are artificially gated by a degree requirement that has nothing to do with the work itself. Researchers call it degree inflation. Employers defaulting to bachelor's required as a lazy filter, not a genuine skill threshold. The credential became a proxy for competence. Then the proxy became the wall. Here's the number that exposes it. 67% of production supervisor job postings ask for a bachelor's degree. But among the people already doing that exact job successfully, right now, only 16% actually have one. The requirement isn't measuring ability to do the work. It's measuring nothing except who gets auto-rejected by a keyword scanner before a human ever reads their name. The consequence compounds. Workers take on tens of thousands in student debt to clear a gate that never needed to exist, chasing a credential to prove they can do a job people used to simply learn by doing it. The old apprenticeship model, learn the skill on the clock, has quietly been dismantled. In its place, a paper toll booth and a bill that follows you for 20 years. And even clearing that gate doesn't guarantee the payoff. A full decade after graduation, 45% of bachelor's degree holders are still working in jobs that never required a degree in the first place. Same credential, same debt, none of the promised return. The gate got harder to pass. It didn't get more meaningful once you passed it. Now watch what's happening at the entry-level rung itself. New York Times reporter Kevin Roose has documented a quiet arms race among tech firms racing to build what they internally call virtual workers AI systems designed specifically to replace the tasks junior employees used to be hired to learn on. The rung isn't just harder to climb onto, companies are actively engineering it out of existence. One tech executive told Roose his company simply stopped hiring engineers below level 5, 3 to 7 years of experience because AI now handles the coding tasks junior hires used to cut their teeth on. Read that twice. The entry-level rung isn't shrinking gradually. At some companies, it has been deleted outright on record by name as official hiring policy. At that same company, another leader said one data scientist working with AI tools now produces what used to require a 75-person team, not a slightly leaner team, a team that no longer exists at all, replaced by a single person and a model. That's not a hiring freeze. That's 74 jobs and every entry-level rung inside them erased from the org chart permanently. Here's the trap this creates, closing in from both sides. You can't get hired without experience, but the entry-level jobs that used to hand out that experience are the exact jobs being automated away first because they're the simplest, most repeatable, cheapest for a model to learn. The bottom rung of the ladder isn't just crowded anymore, it's being sawed off. This isn't the first time technology gutted a category of work. Assembly line automation displaced factory labor, ATMs displaced bank tellers. Container shipping displaced dock workers by the hundreds of thousands. Each time, the fear was mass permanent joblessness. Each time, displaced workers eventually flowed into new roles the old economy hadn't invented yet. History has a pattern here. The question is whether this wave breaks it. So here's the Steelman for optimism. Every past wave looked terminal, and every wave was wrong. But this one differs in one way. It doesn't just target manual tasks. It targets cognitive and creative labor, the exact skills the old economy pointed displaced workers toward: writing, analysis, design, code. If those roles get automated too, where does the next wave of workers flow? Nobody has a clean answer. Take nursing and teaching, two professions people enter for mission, not money, now bleeding workers under the same three pressures as everywhere else: underpay that hasn't tracked cost of living, chronic understaffing that turns one job into three, and credential inflation stacking extra certifications onto roles that used to require none of it. Even the professions built to resist market logic are being eaten by the same system. Zoom out, because this isn't just a tech sector story. Healthcare is short roughly 100,000 registered nurses according to industry projections, and hospitals report vacancy rates near 10% for critical roles, almost the exact curve of America's teacher shortage, where over 55,000 positions sit unfilled or staffed by underqualified substitutes. Two essential sectors, both starved, both told the shortage is workers' fault, not the system's. Here's a paradox nobody warns you about. Get too good and you become unhireable. Hiring managers routinely reject candidates who look overqualified, not because they can't do the job, but because they fear you'll leave in 6 months or quietly expect more money than the role pays. Your competence itself reads as a threat, so excellence gets punished, and mediocrity, carefully performed, gets rewarded. So workers adapt in the only way left. They shrink themselves. They delete the promotion, soften the leadership title, cut the impressive metric, not out of modesty, but out of fear. Fear of the algorithm flagging them as a flight risk. Fear of a manager feeling threatened in the interview chair. The resume stops being a record of achievement and becomes a camouflage document. We've named two ghosts already: the fake listing, the silent employer. Here's the third, and it's the cruelest, because you build it yourself. It's you, disappearing yourself before anyone has even met you. Erasing the version of you that got the raise, ran the team, solved the crisis, so a system built to fear ambition never has to see it in the first place. That brings us to level 4, the endgame level. Not the mechanics of applying, not the theater of interviewing, but the question underneath all of it. What is this entire optimization actually filtering for? And who ends up holding the value it extracts? Because a system this efficient at rejecting people wasn't built by accident. It was built to produce a specific outcome for a specific group. Start with where the value goes. In 1965, the average CEO earned about 20 times what their typical worker made. Today, per the Economic Policy Institute, that ratio sits near 344 to 1, not because leadership got 17 times more valuable, but because every efficiency squeezed from a leaner, more anxious, harder to hire workforce got funneled upward instead of shared. And it's not scarcity driving this, it's strategy. Companies are posting record quarterly profits in the same earnings calls where they announce entry-level hiring freezes. The jobs that used to train 22-year-olds into competent professionals are the first line item cut because training costs money now and the return shows up on someone else's balance sheet later. This didn't happen by drift, it happened because the thing that used to push back is gone. Private sector union membership was around 35% in the 1950s, today it's roughly 6%. That collapse wasn't incidental. It removed the one structure that could force a company to negotiate instead of dictate. Here's what that actually cost you, concretely. No union means no one to grieve the unpaid 4-hour take-home test. No one to cap a hiring process at 5 rounds instead of 9. No one to demand a rejection email exists at all. Individually, every applicant absorbs the cost that collective leverage used to distribute. But leverage isn't dead everywhere. It just requires organizing. Air Canada's flight attendants went on strike and won unpaid groundwork compensation the industry had normalized away for decades. Real wage gains in days from workers acting as one unit instead of 9,000 individuals each writing a polite email. That's the proof. The system responds to collective pressure. It just never responds to yours alone. Now watch who absorbs the shock when a company does cut. Every layoff wave follows the same brutal math. Last hired, first fired. That means the newest, youngest, most entry-level workers, the ones with the least savings, the thinnest resumes, the least negotiating power, get cut first. Every single time, regardless of how the company got into trouble. Follow the money one more step and it stops being abstract. When wealth concentrates at the top instead of circulating through paychecks, spending concentrates too. And spending at the top doesn't sustain a neighborhood restaurant, a hardware store, a barber shop. Those businesses need broad, repeated spending from thousands of stable earners. Starve the base, and the local economy that depends on it starves too. Which brings back the dissonance we opened with. Unemployment numbers, GDP growth, stock indices. 2025's headline indicators look fine on paper, but talk to anyone actually job hunting right now and you'll hear something else entirely. More silence, more ghosting, more unpaid tests than any year they can remember. The dashboard says stable, the lived experience says otherwise. Both are measuring the same economy. So when you're told, that's a you problem, fix your resume, network harder, lower your standards, recognize what that phrase is actually doing. It isn't advice, it's the ghost economy's final function. Taking a structural, engineered outcome and repackaging it as your personal failure, one isolated applicant at a time. So no one ever compares notes and sees the pattern. Here's where actual leverage exists inside this system. The posting itself, not as vague inspiration. Read it as a blueprint. Every repeated verb, every named tool, every line under requirements is a keyword the screening software is hunting for. Mirror that language directly in the resume, phrase for phrase. You stop guessing what a ghost wants and start answering the only question it's actually asking. Weak ties beat the algorithm, and the data is blunt about it. Harvard Business School research puts referred candidates at roughly 3 times the callback rate of a cold portal submission. LinkedIn's own internal numbers back it up. Acquaintances, not close friends, source the majority of actual hires. One message to someone from an old job outperforms 100 applications typed into a form. Flip the interview in your head before you walk in. Getting selected out of 200 applicants to sit across from a human isn't luck. It's a filter you already passed. Talented enough to earn that seat means talented enough for the next company too. Walk in like someone with 3 doors, not someone begging at one. The system is engineered to take 2 things from you: money and identity. Protect the money first. An emergency fund sized to the real length of a modern search, 6 to 9 months, not the old 3-month rule. Bridge work is fine. Freelance gigs, a shift job, as long as it stays a bridge, not a new trap. Protect the identity second. You are not your job title. 3 ghosts ran this search. Name them one last time. The fake posting, a role that was never open, built only to farm resumes. The silent employer, the company that let your application vanish into a portal no human opened. The faceless interviewer, an AI scoring your face before a person saw your name. And the quietest ghost, the self you shrank to survive the other 3. Here's the final reframe. Getting the job was never the real endgame of this system. The endgame was whether you'd still recognize yourself at the end of the search, whether rejection, silence, and the algorithm would hollow you out before an offer came. Staying whole through it, keeping your worth separate from a callback rate, is the one outcome this system can't script. The jobs report number that opened this video hasn't moved. Millions of openings, a hiring rate stuck nowhere near it, and a system quietly built to keep it that way. 4 names, 3 ghosts, 1 shrinking self. None of it was random. This was never a search you were failing. It was a machine, and you just learned how it runs.